Let's go to the main menu and click Tools. In the Tools menu search box, type in 2 words, Bible and Book. You'll see below under the Interactive Media option, Bible Books Explorer. Please click that menu choice. The Bible Books Explorer window is open, but it only fills half our screen. Therefore, left-click and hold the mouse down at the left border and drag to expand the width of the Bible Books Explorer. As you drag your mouse left, the window will become larger. Let's fill up the whole screen. Now, the first thing you want to do is make sure that you have reset your filter. Therefore, go up to the top and click All, as seen here. Now, at the top right, there is 5 viewable options: Books, Timeline, Intertext, Stats, and List. Currently, List is the one that's selected. As you can see, there's a line underneath it. Let's go ahead and click on Books, as seen here. Now, in the Books view, Logos is going to use boxes to describe each book. It's also going to use color and size. For example, in the legend above, you can see light blue, dark blue, representing narratives. Light green, dark green for books that are procedural, in other words, law-type books. Light yellow, dark yellow, behavioral, which is dealing with application, exhortation, and then expository, light orange, dark orange. This color scheme allows us to look at one book and quickly get a feel for the contents of that book. So in the case of Genesis, we see it's very wide. That tells us it's a large book, in this case 50 chapters. We see that it's mostly blue, narrative, with a little bit of expository and a little bit of behavioral. Now, just below that to the right, you have 6 views. The first view is currently selected with the line underneath in order, and that puts the books in canonical order: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus. If you flow your mouse over one of the book blocks, you'll get some statistics. In this case, Genesis, 50 chapters, 1,533 verses, 32,161 words, and 91% narrative. You can also click on the box, so therefore click on the Genesis box. In this window, as you scroll down, you will learn details about the book: theme, summary, purpose, message, key details, and notice also at the end you get to see date ranges based on commentaries and what they believe is the date of the book. You can close this window by scrolling up and locating the X at the top right, as seen here. Go ahead and click the X. Let's change our view by clicking on Ranked, located here. Now, Ranked is a little bit different. It reorders the books by the number of citations in the Logos library. So according to this chart, Romans is the most cited. Then comes Psalms, Matthew, John, etc. So this is a little bit different, but again, it's another way of looking at the same information. Let's go ahead and click on Hebrew. Hebrew will sort the books based on the Hebrew Old Testament order. Then it will include the Apocrypha or deuterocanonical books. Those are books accepted by the Catholic Church, but not the Protestant churches. Then it will display the New Testament books in the traditional order that we have. Let's next click on Words. The Words view will rank those books with the most words first and the least words last. Let's go ahead and click on Chapters, as seen here. In the Chapters view, those books with the most chapters will be first, like the Psalms, and then the least amount of chapters will be last. Let's go ahead and click on Verses next. In the Verses view, the books are sorted by the most verses in any given book. Psalms, in this case, is first, with Genesis following thereafter. Let's once again click on In Order, the first view located here. Now that we've explored the Books view, let's go to the top right and click on Timeline. In the Timeline view, Logos is going to show you the date ranges that are associated with each book of the Bible. Now, this is very important. You'll notice at the top left, mine currently says Bible Knowledge Commentary. This is because different commentaries have different date choices for each book of the Bible. That's why when you look at the graph, you see kind of this barbell, a circle, line, and another circle. That's to let you know the range of dates that are associated with each book of the Bible. Now, over at the right, you'll see a circle with a minus sign. This allows you to zoom out. Also, the vertical bars allow you to zoom in. So as you grab the handles, you can change the width and the height. You can zoom in and zoom out. These are the two tools you'll use to really zoom in on the information you're looking for. Let's go ahead and click on Zoom Out. As you can see, we zoomed out so far that all the data got mushed together. Now I'm going to grab the gray circle at the bottom right. Watch how moving it upward allows me to zoom in. At the top left, I'm going to grab the circle and drag that from left to right. Again, watch how the screen changes. Next, let's click on the Bible Knowledge Commentary to change the commentary that's supplying the date ranges. At the time this video was made, these were the current books in my library that appeared in this list. Hopefully, Logos will continue to add more books and resources to this drop-down list so that you can see the various date ranges. I'm going to go ahead and choose the MacArthur Bible Handbook. Now we can see the new data set based off of the MacArthur Bible Handbook dates. Now let's go over to the right and click on Intertext, as seen here. Now this Intertext visual can be a little overwhelming the first time you look at it. But here's the key to unlocking this information. What it's showing is relationships between one book of the Bible and another. If you look closely, you'll see how the colored ribbons go from one book to another. And that's simply saying that each book includes verses of the other. Now, over at the left, we have a filter window. This allows us to reduce the amount of information we're looking at. Let's go ahead and click on Gospel, so that all we're looking at is the first 4 books of the New Testament. Now that we chose Gospel, we can see Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John at the left, and we see them highlighted in orange. Over at the right, we see Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Psalms, and Isaiah, and a few of the minor prophets as well highlighted. This tells us that there's a relationship between these 4 Gospels and these other Old Testament books. Let's go ahead and float our mouse over John as seen here. Now when you float your mouse on, let's say, John as we're doing here, we now focus in on just John and its relationship to other books of the Old Testament. So we clearly see that Exodus, Numbers, Psalms, Isaiah, Zechariah are being cited or referenced in some way in the book of John. This kind of detail can be very helpful in showing how an author connects and draws from the Old Testament. Now, besides floating your mouse over a book name, you can also float your mouse over the colored ribbons. Now, it turns out, John, there's actually 2 ribbons in red flowing out of the book of John. I'm floating on one of them, which, as you can see, creates this pop-up that says John, arrow, Numbers 1. So at least one of the cross-references in the book of John is making some reference to Numbers. Once again, I'm going to float my mouse over John to reduce the number of ribbons so that I will only see the ribbons flowing out of the book of John. Next, I'm going to float my mouse over the yellow ribbon flowing out of the book of John. Notice the yellow pop-up that tells me that John is referencing Psalms 8 times. After using this tool for some time, I've noticed that reversing it is sometimes a little bit easier. What do I mean by that? We can see flowing out of John all these Old Testament references. But if we go to one specific Old Testament book, like here for Exodus, it's a little bit easier to see all the cross-references that John is making to the book of Exodus. So go ahead and float your mouse over Exodus. Now we can see Exodus and its relationship to the 4 Gospels. Let's once again float our mouse over the book of John as seen here. Now instead of floating your mouse over the book of John, I want you to click on the book of John as seen here. Logos next generates a list of all the cross-references. So now you can see the specific passage and the text with this simple search. Let's go ahead and close this window by clicking on the X on the tab located here. Now, citation is a clear, direct reference to an Old Testament passage. It may not be a direct quote, but there is a clear connection between the passage. Now, let's click on quotation, as seen here. Now, quotations are direct quotes from the Old Testament in the New Testament book. These can be words or phrases. So notice how as we move from citation to quotation, we're now moving to allusion. The quotes are getting more general and more looser. In other words, the connection is not as easy to identify, or it's a more general connection. Let's click on allusion next. Now, as we move to allusion, we can see the number of colored ribbons increasing, and that's because the connections are more generalized. Let's go ahead and click on echo next. Echoes are very loose connections from one book to another, and that's why we're seeing a large increase in the number of colored ribbons. Let's click on All as our last option listed here. In this view, we're combining citations, quotations, allusions, and echoes all in one view. So now you kind of have a giant picture of all the relationships between the Old and New Testament books. Next, click on Stats at the top right. Now, Stats allows us to look at the lemma and the roots and their relationships within a book. Let's remove our gospel filter by clicking on the X located here. Let's create a new filter by clicking on New Testament here at the left. Now our graph has changed so that we're looking at just the New Testament. The number 27 tells us how many books are involved. You can see our chart is based on lemmas used once versus words. And we see these little dots. Let's float our mouse over the colored dot here at the top right. The pop-up provides us some basic stats. Number of words, 18,412. Lemmas used once in corpus, 4 and 13. Now, if you take this data and compare it to the concordance search, you will find some discrepancies. The numbers don't always match. So at this point in time, I'm not sure if there's some errors in Logos or there's some different ways of counting going on. But at least it gets you in the ballpark and you can further explore this tool. Let's change some of our metrics. Therefore, go to the top left and click on Lemmas used once in corpus. Let's choose Lemmas used only in book, as seen here. Then, just to the right, click Books, located here. Please choose Chapters from the drop-down menu list. By changing the two variables for comparison, your graph below will change, as will the stats for each colored dot. So be very careful in what you're choosing so that you understand the analysis below. Let's choose the last option at the far right, List, as seen here. This view is probably the most practical and easiest to use. As you can see, it's laid out as a grid. You get some additional information such as title, author's theme, key verse, key people, key places, key things, etc. Also at the top right, there's a little drop-down menu you can click on. So let's click that triangle to see our options. Now your menu will look different than my menu because this is a history list. It lets you know where you've been. Notice that to the left of the drop-down triangle, we have the less than sign and greater than sign. Very similar to the back and forward history that you see in a browser. So if you need to retrace your steps, this is an easy way to do it. I'm going to choose Books from the menu. Logos has now brought up a previous view, my Books view. Let's click on the three vertical dots, the stoplight menu, that is the option menu located here. Notice this view does allow you to change the size of the window, but you cannot print out this information at this point in time. Let's go ahead and click the stoplight menu once again to close this menu. Now to reset the filters, the easiest way is to either click the X for individual items, or you can click All and that will eliminate all the filters you've selected. So let's go ahead and click on All. So before we finish this video, you may be wondering, hey John, what's the practical use of this tool? Well, in short, it's really to help you make comparisons between one or more Bible books at a high level. Let's go ahead and close this tool by clicking on the X on the tab located here.